Chris Mannix has fled the bubble, and he is now. Where are you, Chris? Are you back in your home town, back in your apartment?
Yeah, I'm back in Boston. Taking a little bit of time, but I'll be back into the mix sometime next week.
So wait, you go back into the bubble, or you're done with the bubble from here on out?
To go back in, you have to re-quarantine for the 7 full days, and I did it once. I don't plan on doing it again.
So you left before the games that people are going to be watching actually happen. So was that by your choice? Did you want to be there for the early part or the later part, or how does that get decided?
Yeah, it's a long story, but as someone that covers boxing too, I was anticipating having to do fights for DAZN in September, and the pandemic kind of cut them short. But I had plans to come out at this point. We have another writer, Michael Rosenberg, who is in right now, covering the rest of the way.
All right, so right now we're sitting, and you look at the playoffs. You've got the Heat in to the Eastern Conference Finals. They went 8-1 in the playoffs. How surprised are you by their performance?
Extremely. And look, there are variables to this. The Giannis injury is a part of it, but they were beating up on the Bucks before Giannis turned his ankle. They're a team that's just built to succeed in the postseason for 2 reasons. One, they've got an alpha who is kind of capable of taking over games on both ends of the floor when you need him to. I mean, LeBron's the ultimate alpha, but Jimmy Butler is cut out of that same cloth. And I think the second most important thing is that they've got a coach that's just great. And coaching in the playoffs, it matters. It's where teams are able to kind of separate themselves at times. And you've watched what Eric Spoelstra did in this Bucks series with, kind of the defensive wall they created to kind of confound Giannis, and the way they were able to attack those Milwaukee shooters. I mean, they had a brilliant game plan coming in. So it's not as simple as having those 2 things, but when you have those 2 things, it makes winning in the playoffs, it gives you a big advantage.
Giannis is now going to be a big dramatic decision as to what he's going to do. But before we get to what Giannis is going to do, LeBron James' team loses 4-1 in a series, and he sits out the final 2 games with a sprained ankle. What's the reaction there compared to the reaction with Giannis? It feels to me like Giannis gets a lot of passes in terms of criticism from the media.
Yeah, I mean, he gets a pass. Well, there's a couple ways to look at it. I don't give him a pass, or I don't think it's worth of a pass to say that him sitting out was him being soft. I mean, you saw him go out there and went down again. It looked like his ankle blew up in Game 4. And you watch him before Game 5. He was trying to get out there and play. And, people on that team were telling me, and maybe they're just telling me this, but he did want to play. Like, he was pushing pretty hard to get out there and get on the floor. The Bucks just weren't willing to let him do that. And I can understand it. Like, watching him warm up, he was doing set shots. Like, there was no mobility to it, and the chances were that if he got out there,
he was going to roll it.
A fraction. Yeah, he was going to roll it again. I mean, that just happens over and over.
But they were down 3-0 before the ankle injury.
Here's where you criticize Giannis. If you're Giannis, you simply can't allow your coach in the first couple of games to take you out of them. You can't. Great players play 40-plus minutes in the playoffs. I mean, you look at what Kyle Lowry did in Game 3 against the Celtics, where that season was on the line. He went 44 minutes. He played 45, I think, in the next game. This guy's 34 years old, and he's going out and doing that. Do you think there's any way in the world that LeBron would let Frank Vogel play him 34, 35 minutes? Like, if you're Giannis, you can't just shrug your shoulders and say, I'll do whatever my coach tells me to do. If he sends somebody to come in for me, you wave them off. And if people think that's ridiculous, I've seen it happen over and over again, where a star player will tell their coach, no, I'm good in this situation. That to me is the biggest criticism of Giannis and the biggest criticism of the coaching staff. You can't allow yourself to be treated like it's a regular season game. You have to say, I'm playing 45 minutes tonight, and that's the end of it. He didn't do that, and that says a lot about Giannis.
All right, so where does he go now? He's got a year left with the Bucks, and there's going to be a ton of speculation and discussion about what his future holds. What do you think the future is for Giannis with the Bucks?
Unless he tells them, I'm not going to re-sign next summer, I don't believe they'll trade him. In fact, I think there's a pretty clear path to what Milwaukee's going to try to do this offseason, and that's go get Chris Paul. It's, Chris Paul is most likely done in Oklahoma City. They look prepared to, engage in a full rebuild. There's not a big market for Chris Paul because he's owed $90 million on the rest of his deal or something like that.
And he's 35 years old or whatever the heck he is.
Exactly. He's a high risk, high reward type of guy, but Milwaukee's in a high risk type of situation. So if you can package Eric Bledsoe and multiple first round picks, remember they have some draft capital there because they got a draft pick in that deal that Malcolm Brogdon went to Indiana, and they've got their own picks in the coming years. You'll be able to put together, I think, an offer that will probably be appealing to Oklahoma City, which is trying to get off that contract anyway. If I had to guess right now, it's that Giannis stays and that Chris Paul winds up in Milwaukee.
That would be intriguing. On the other side here, we've got the Celtics up 3-2 on the Raptors. The Raptors, as you mentioned, stayed alive with an incredible shot at the end of Game 3. What happens in this series? Do you expect the Celtics to advance?
I do, and the Raptors showed great heart in getting back into this series in Games 3 and 4, but I think Boston's better. And if Pascal Siakam is not going to show up and be the all-star he was during the season, the Raptors have no chance. I mean, it's not as simplistic as I'm making it, but Siakam's kind of the engine that drives them, and he's been bad really since the restart. And if he's not able to step up and be the equivalent of Jason Tatum, I don't know where they go from there. I mean, Kyle Lowry's been great. Fred VanVleet makes shots, but you need a guy that makes plays in the fourth quarter. And Siakam hasn't been that guy except for some stretches in Game 4. So unless he has a brilliant next couple of games, I think Boston has too much firepower to be beaten in this series.
So then who wins the Eastern Conference and advance to the NBA Finals?
It's a good question because, again, both teams have alphas. Boston has a couple. I think that gives them a slight edge in that Tatum can take over, Kemba Walker can take over, and sometimes Jaylen Brown can take over. The Bucks don't. The Heat have Jimmy Butler, and he's great. But other than that, it's I don't know that Tyler Hero is ready for that. Duncan Robinson's a young guy. You go down the roster. Goran Dragic is okay. It might come down to the coaching battle between Spoelstra and Brad Stevens. I mean, I don't mean to beat this drum to death, but when you have two guys like that who are elite at in-game strategy and substitution patterns, they're going to make a difference there. So I think that whatever coach devises the best schemes to kind of slow down the star players and the other ones, there'll be some unique stuff thrown at these guys. I think that could play the difference. I lean towards Boston in that series because Boston will not get beat up on the boards in where they would be by some other teams because Miami is not that big, and they've got more firepower on the wings.
We've obviously got the Lakers winning last night over the Rockets, and the Clippers found a way to get the win over the Nuggets. Do you expect both teams, now that they're up 2-1, it would require the underdog now to win 3 out of 4 against them, which seems pretty tough. Would you be pretty stunned if it's not Lakers and Clippers like we all kind of expected when the season began in the Western Conference Finals?
Yeah, I'd be surprised, I would say, at this point. Nothing the Rockets do now would stun me. And the Lakers, look, it was a brilliant fourth quarter last night, but they got something out of Rajon Rondo that they may never get again. I mean, Rondo shot the lights out of the ball. He's not a dead-eye shooter. The Lakers were struggling mightily with a three-point shot throughout the game until that fourth quarter. They went on that run, the midway point, that made the difference. I just think the Rockets are never really out of it because of how capable they are of just blowing up offensively. And it's clear they're a terrible matchup for the Lakers. The Lakers can't play big against them, at least not effectively. Not with P.J. Tucker out there staying out of foul trouble and giving them a three-point shooter at the 5. I think I'll put it this way: I think the Rockets have a better chance of beating the Lakers than the Nuggets do of beating the Clippers right now. I think the Clippers, when they flip that switch defensively, which they did in that last game, they're just too much for the Nuggets. The Rockets, they're just like a lightning rod, man. Like they'll just start jacking up threes left and right. If they get hot, they're capable of blowing up the Lakers too.
All right, so presuming it's the Lakers and the Clippers, it's a question people have been asking since October. Who's better? Who do you expect to win the series?
It's a better matchup for the Lakers than the Rockets are. but I think it depends on what Clippers team shows up. I mean, there are times the Clippers look like they're going through the motions. Pretty much everybody but Kawhi Leonard looks like they're playing lethargic out there. But there are times, like the fourth quarter against the Nuggets the other night, where they all get together and they all play like they're the best team in the West. And, maybe it's a case of the Clippers just don't look at the Nuggets as being this, significant threat. But at the same time, they did it against the Mavericks, too. I think if the Clippers are on their A game, they're better than the Lakers. But the Clippers they just never seem to be consistent. They can't put together, 4 or 5 straight games of playing in the way that they played at times. So I'm going to lean towards the Lakers in that matchup, but I think the Clippers are the better team. They just don't play like it all the time.
Whoever wins the West, prohibitive favorite over whoever comes out of the East?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that it's going to look that way because the star power is all going to be in the western side of the ledger, and oftentimes that does win championships. But, the depth is on the Eastern Conference side. When I say depth, I don't mean a team that can play 9-10 deep because Milwaukee's proven that doesn't matter in the playoffs. Boston's depth is like 7 strong, maybe 8 if Gordon Hayward comes back for this next series, and certainly back in time for a potential final. Same thing with Miami. They go 6, 7, 8 deep of really good players, and they're really comfortable playing off each other in that way. And where at times the Clippers still look dysfunctional playing off each other, the Lakers at times the same way. They incorporate their pieces back in the mix. These two teams in the East play with incredible chemistry, and that comes from playing together all season long. And that's the kind of thing that matters in a major series like this that are coming up. I think that it's no matter what team comes out of that proposed Final Four, I think it's going to be a coin flip either way.
Last question for you. What are they going to do? Let's presume that the Celtics win tonight and set up the Eastern Conference Finals. Are they going to go ahead and roll right in and let those teams start playing soon? Will they give them a lot of days off? I mean, obviously, you've got an unbalanced situation where one team in the Eastern Conference, potentially whoever emerges, could end up having a significant wait till they're able to actually play in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I know it hasn't been decided yet, at least not in the last couple of days when I've asked that question. I can tell you that they want to get the hell out of the bubble as soon as possible. And if that means, rolling into the Eastern Conference Finals faster and kind of crossing your fingers and hoping that a Western Conference Finals is quick, they'll roll the dice on that. They're not going to slow down measurably, those conference playoffs. I think it's possible you get 3 or 4 days off in between the end of the semifinals and the conference finals, but I don't think it's any more than that. You're not going to see them, sit on the sidelines for a week, 8 days, waiting for the Western Conference to catch up. They want to get these things rolling so everybody can pack up their bags and get out of there as fast as they can.
I know I said last question, but real last question. How much trepidation is there about going head-to-head with the NFL and the college football seasons in a way that never happens otherwise for the NBA Finals, Eastern and Western Conference?
Yeah, I haven't heard too much out of it, but, I mean, it's obviously something that would have to flash across their radar, and maybe they schedule games accordingly. I don't know. They've played with the timing of some games a little bit. Of course, at times they've gone up against big events like the NCAA tournament or whatnot. But you're right. In the playoffs, and especially the finals, they've pretty much had an open field. So this is new territory for them. And maybe we'll see something unique where they don't play over the weekends, where they try to go Friday, Monday. Remember, in the finals generally, there are 3 days off between games on Thursday, and then they play, or 2 days off, Thursday and then Sunday. That's the typical final schedule. They could slate these finals to go Friday, Monday to avoid football weekends. Now, I haven't thought much about it, but that wouldn't surprise me at all.
Good stuff. That's Chris Mannix.